Welcome back to the One More K podcast. We're in episode number 29. Oh my God, 29. We're going to the 100 soon. Welcome back to this wonderful show of trail running, businesses, ultra, anything that's insightful. Back on the show is, of course, Ned Phillips, this time from Singapore. Good evening, Ned.
Hello, Marcus. Anything insightful refers to what Marcus says, not what I say. So that's probably the most accurate description.
We shall see. And we have our special guest on the show, John Ellis, the founder of T8, the founder of Gone Running, and many other businesses. Welcome, John.
G'day, Marcus. G'day, Ned. Look, great to be on the show. Big fan. I've got to say, One More K, the name of the show. There's no such thing as one more K. It's always more.
You are the first one to pick it up, actually. I think people are like, what does it mean? But we say one more K is a bit of a mantra for us in running and in businesses, where you just have one more K, but it's actually many more Ks.
Yep. Yeah, it never stops.
We could kick off by, I'm sure, showing my underwear right now, but that might be a bit too intimate because I'm wearing your T8 Commandos. I am such a big fan, and because we're recording on YouTube, it would be rated R, so I don't think we can do that. But hey, man, your T8 underwears are just the best. And Ned has been already, before you joined, raving about those. Ned, what's your experience with T8?
Well, actually, so my experience, John, is I'm an ultra runner, long distance guy, more than anything else, used to be triathlon, whatever. I used to carry, so I don't use the Commandos because I use underwear. I know that's shameful, but I just do. But your Sherpa shorts, dude, I used to have a Camelback. And when I put on these Sherpa shorts, because I used to have pockets and stuff, I put on these Sherpa shorts. So, John, I run 100-mile races without backpacks. I put everything in the Sherpa shorts. I can do 100 miles. I've done 100 miles with Sherpa shorts. Those waistband, and, it might be hard. We can talk about it, how you product development. It goes all the way around. You can put everything in. Dude, I mean, I can never imagine wearing any other running shorts apart from these.
Well, that's exactly what we love to hear. I mean, you're doing milers, and you're exactly our customer, as well as being people who want to run 10Ks or 5Ks. But, at the end of the day, look, you really love the fact that you love the products. And at the end of the day, we make them for ourselves. I'm the co-founder of T8 with Mark Green. We're both ultra runners. We've been doing this for, God, like 15, 20 years. And at the end of the day, we're just making stuff that we want to wear. We see, we go for a run, we think, look, we don't like this backpack, or, the current products available in the market, they're not quite what we want because maybe it doesn't have the functionality, or maybe it's made for cold climates and it's not really quite right for hotter climates when you live in places like Singapore where you are, or Hong Kong where we are. It's hot, it's humid. You need stuff that is, functionally exceptional for that sort of weather. So at the end of the day, love the fact that you love the Commandos, the Sherpa shorts, but at the end of the day, we're solving problems for us, and hopefully, that means we're solving problems for lots of other runners as well.
You're going straight to the pitch of your product. I love it. You're a true businessman. I think that's already covering many parts of T8. I was thinking, what's the best way to introduce John? Because when I go to your LinkedIn, I'm reading a certain description of mining, resources, commodities. It's a very specific description of you. I'm not going to read it out loud, but along the lines of you're doing long only global junior mid-cap resources, you focusing on miners. That's all one part of the story. And then I go to the T8 website, and then it's the John, the naked runner, the UTMB index 763. So wow, you have almost two different lives, at least online. Help us to reconcile those two. Who is John?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of a Clark Kent. Well, I don't know about Superman on the other side, but Clark Kent and mediumly good man, I guess. I don't know. There's a couple of alter egos here. The day job, pays the bills in a lot of ways. It's basically running a portfolio of shares focused on natural resources and the smaller end of town. It's real. I find it really interesting. There's so many things to think about when you're investing in shares. You're thinking about the macro economy. You're thinking about the individual companies themselves, valuations, supply demand for different commodities. You've got to have a view on geology, metallurgy, engineering. You've got to have a view on ESG these days. It's very important. If you piss off your local communities, you're not going to get permitted. So bringing all of that together. That's the day job. Unfortunately, I work in a pretty small team. I don't have a lot of help, so it is a long day. Starts at 6:30, finishes at 10:30, but I do have a bit of flexibility in between. Then there's the other side of me, which is a running addict, and it's where I find my zen. It's where I sort of reset myself and get sane again, and I de-stress. When you come to Hong Kong, I turned from a road runner into a trail runner because the trails are just so good over here. They're so convenient, and when you love trail running so much, it becomes, I guess, a natural step to think, can we make a business out of this?
So maybe, work is work. Got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. We all love running. What was the point? Because, buying shares, the business is hard. You know that these companies you buy is hard. What was that run when you're like, I know, I do a hard thing, I invest in shares. I do a hard thing running. What the hell? Let's add another hard thing. Let's do a brand. Was it like one magical run moment, or did it slowly come to you?
It was a magical run moment, but it wasn't magical. So you've probably heard of this. It's a challenge called Hong Kong 4 Trails Ultra Challenge.
Of course.
So it's 4 major trails in Hong Kong. It's a combined total of 300 Ks. It's about 15 kilometers of vert. It's an absolute beast. So I think I did it. I think it might have been 2015, 2016. And I just remember, 15 Ks to go. The last bit is climbing Lantau Peak and then Sunset Peak. And at that point, the chafing in my pants had become so bad. It had been building up for a while. I'd been lubing up as much as I could. And just going up that, the chafing got so bad that I kind of had to pull my pants off, and I pulled my shorts off.
Yep.
I kept my t-shirt on, but it was not a good place to be. Fortunately, the sun was starting to go down. I didn't really horrify too many hikers and other runners. But, that was almost the epiphany. Like, we just, I thought, yes, we can do better. There has to be a better solution in terms of chafing for ultra runners. From there, had a discussion with Mark Green, who's also based in Hong Kong. He's from Canada. He'd had similar problems. And we basically spent the next year and a half just trying to develop underwear, just researching into fabrics and designs and, where are the problem areas, basically starting from scratch and first principles, as opposed to, this is on the market, let's just do something like that, but a little bit different. So we went through a year and a half of testing and designing, and it was a long journey because, when you want to test this stuff, you got to go run for 70 Ks. You run for 12 hours to do it properly. And so you can't test it every day. And it took us a while, but eventually we got there and we thought we had something that was a little bit different. And, that's when we launched the brand.
What a place to start. 15K to go on the 4 trails. I mean, to say the 4 trails is a beast. I used to live in Hong Kong way before the 4 trails came, but I know those trails. And, like all of us, I've had bad chafing. But you're right. That moment, because chafing sears into your brain, doesn't it?
Oh, it's just horrific. There's probably nothing worse. Every single step is burning pain, and you can't do anything about it once it's there. It's just a horrible experience. And then you sort of overlay, 60 hours of running before that and everything else that's going through your head. That was the epiphany for me. And hence, I guess in that, half nude moment, that's where it was born.
Did you have any fabric experience of any description, or were you complete newbie?
Always been a little bit of a gear nerd. I've always been, I'm not the fastest runner. I don't think I'm the strongest runner. I've got a bit of grit, but I'm always looking for 1%ers on how I can help myself, especially when it comes to things like gear. So I'd always looked a lot into things like fabrics and, why do people design things in certain ways, but don't have a background in design or fabrics or textiles or any of that. So, coming at it from, a very blank slate.
How did you then find the fabrics? Like, how did you establish this amazing concept? Like, did you have partners in Hong Kong, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, really good question. And we probably started off, I guess, fairly with what we knew. So we went to the Sham Shui Po sort of markets, and we just went there, sort of tested quite a lot of different fabrics. At that point, we didn't really know what we wanted, but came across the idea of a mesh as something that's a little bit different. A lot of it's very unusual fabric for some underwear, and we sort of decided, this is working, and it works in a lot of ways because it's very breathable, it's very lightweight. You still have to find something that's very less abrasive, and then there's also some design elements as well. But it's not straightforward. We thought we did a lot of reaching out to various suppliers. We thought we'd found something. We tested it for about 4 months. We thought, this is a really good fabric. Then we put in the order with the factory, and being a Chinese factory, they sent us a slightly different fabric without telling us. And then it's like, this is not quite right. So there's, it was a lot of, I guess, trial and error, a lot of learning on the go, a lot of dead ends sometimes with your Chinese suppliers, just things that you take for granted, I guess, when you're smaller. Had to learn through that and get through a few obstacles. But that's how we all started.
When did you get the name?
It was just a little bit before we launched. It's hard to come up with a name. T8. We liked the idea of T8 because it's got a bit of a special meaning in Hong Kong, which is obviously our home market. Everyone, it's different with work from home, but everyone loves a T8 because you get the day off work. School's cancelled, the kids get to play at home. So there was something nice about that. But then also it represents it's the worst conditions, in Hong Kong and, the tropics is when a T8 comes through. And that's sort of the thinking behind our product. We want to make gear that works really well in the worst conditions, which is really hot, really humid. It still sort of hopefully keeps you pretty comfortable.
So I had my own startup that didn't make it in the end. But the first 6 months, I called it Cash, I called it Mangosteen, and I didn't like the name, and I finally called it Bamboo. And I remember it is very hard to find that name. Are you willing to share any other contenders of the names? Were there other contenders of names? Do you remember, or was it like TA all along?
There was T8. We had Typhoon Wear for a while. That was sort of one of the leading ideas we had, but. Typhoons, it's a very sort of Asian specific thing. I think, I'm not sure if it really sort of travels globally. But we just, in the end, we like T8 because it's short, it's sharp, it's very memorable. So, there we are.
How much did it help to launch a brand in Hong Kong, arguably a smaller market than America? Or how much did it not help to launch in Hong Kong?
Yeah, really good question. I think, Hong Kong, one of the great things about the Hong Kong market is it's very compact. It's basically 7 million people within a radius of probably 50 kilometers. And so getting the brand out to those 7 million people, or the subset of trail runners, was a lot easier. So that helped. And I think one thing we've always worked on is really, at the end of the day, people look up to the best runners, and so we want to give our product out to the best runners. If they like it, they'll keep wearing it, and we've really relied on word of mouth. So that definitely helped. I think when you think about Asian trail running, I think a lot of the other countries are coming through, but I think places like Japan and Hong Kong have probably been seen as almost leaders in terms of trends. So that helped because we could get T8 a bit bigger in Hong Kong. Places like Singapore or the Philippines or Malaysia or Vietnam would be looking to Hong Kong and say, this is a new brand, we'll try that. So I think it probably did help. But then at the same time, now we're thinking about what does European expansion look like, or how do we get to the US? And, we're a long way away from that. And, I think we've probably got maybe a dozen distributors in Europe. It's fairly small at the moment. We haven't really got a proper strategy for the US, but that's going to be a lot more difficult from this part of the world.
I was going to ask and Marcus, I don't know why I'm jumping in. Marcus is running his own brand right now. I'll ask one more question.
And by the way, I do like the Lecker nutrition. By the way, big fan. We have it in sort of in the office, and it's the best sort of healthy snack out there.
Thank you. I didn't pay you for this, but I appreciate the plug. Thank you. I might throw in some samples next time I see you. But I appreciate. I do asking this question because I'm sitting in the same, boat with you, right? I'm launching a brand in Vietnam is a bit different than launching a brand, of course, in Hong Kong, premium, different customer segments. But I would put us into the bucket of Southeast Asian brands, right? And I guess I'm doing it, you may be doing it because I believe in the Asian powerhouse the next 5 to 10 years, also for brands, not just for manufacturing. And from what I can see so far in US and Europe, people are paying more attention to what's going on in the East. And that's also why we're doing the show, to highlight, of course, more brands and businesses coming from Asia, because I think people should know this. So what's been the response in US or in Europe for your product and for your brand so far?
Yeah, I think it's sort of starting to get out there a little bit. We sort of had feedback from UTMBs rolling around this year, but actually it was interesting last year. I think a lot of the Asian runners were wearing T8 products for UTMB and some of the other sister races. We're starting to get a bit more interest in Europe. We're getting distributors actually reaching out to us and saying, look, can I be your exclusive distributor in X country or Y country? The US, it's hard. It's such a big market. I don't think you can treat it as one, homogenous blob. And if you're going through the distributor model, maybe you need to divide it into different areas, or maybe you use agents. We don't have a wholesale model there at the moment. But having said that, word of mouth is getting out there. Even without a distributor or any sort of proper plan, I think it's probably our fifth or sixth largest market. So I think the word of mouth is getting out. I think proper, like proper runners are wearing it. They tell their friends, and so there is something there, but it's something that we need to kind of properly strategize.
How do you do? So I'm the odd one on the call. I don't have my own company I'm trying to launch.
Come on,
So I
hurry up.
tried that for John, I tried it for 8 years in tech, and
Yeah,
it's
hard,
bloody
right?
hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is hard. How do you do brand? Like, I love the idea of branding. I love content, and me and Marcus talk a lot. I mean, we're doing this podcast for content for Lecker. We're doing it to talk to great people, but partly, how have you worked on brand? Because it is a great name. Everywhere I run in Singapore, everyone's wearing T8, so the ultra runners know it. But how did you think about brand?
Yeah, and then this is a good question as well. It's I guess when you're first starting, you think, yeah, I've got a product that solves a problem. You think, oh, okay, that's all I need to do. I just need to solve a problem, and people will come and buy it. But as you do this more and more, you realize actually the brand is really important, and especially over the last few years, where you start to become a little bit successful, and then you get copied. During COVID, for example, we had some very successful masks. I'm a little sort of tangent here, but we talked about the commandos, and you guys love it. But when we had in Hong Kong at the start of COVID, we actually had some restrictions where even if you were exercising outside in the middle of summer, you had to wear a mask, and 15 minutes of sweating, and you're effectively waterboarding yourself. And so we ended up getting all these people, all our runners, like I had about 8 or 9 runner friends basically sending me photos of themselves with their underwear strapped to their face. So we made these masks out of it. It was a really good seller for a couple of years, but it was quite successful. But then 12 months later, we got copied. Like other companies in Hong Kong wouldn't even change the packaging. It would just change the T8 part, change it to a different. We've had the same thing with our underwear. It's been copied in China. We've had quite a few brands in Hong Kong that have copied our Sherpa shorts. And so when that happens to you, you realize that actually, you got to have more than just a good product, because that can get copied. And so it comes back to the brand. And so it's something that we've been learning about and increasingly focused on. And I think for us, you come back to who we are as a brand. And I think at the end of the day, we're kind of real runners, where we're kind of authentic. You look out and you see some of the branding from companies like there's some new up and coming brands in the US, for example, and you think, wow, like design is so good, like the visuals are amazing, and it's just so slick, and you can tell that brand's it's very much design led. It's beautiful, and while part of you wants to be a bit like that, I think for us it's actually about we're runners at the end of the day. We're solving problems. We get things done, and at the same time, we're very passionate about running. That's sort of, I guess, from a branding point of view, who we are.
When I went through your athletes page online, and this is maybe also part of your brand, I recognize many great athletes, and we know some of them, of course, Esther and Stingray and Vanya and friends of the show. But I think what stood out is, as far as I can tell, they're all really kind and great human beings. So how do you pick those athletes? Because that's part of your branding. How do you select those individuals to help you create those stories.
Yeah, and actually, you're absolutely right there, and it's a really good pickup. I mean, am I allowed to say it? We've got a no dickheads policy.
Yep, you
Yeah,
can say that,
yeah,
man.
yeah. Like at the end of the day, yeah, you want people, to represent you, and there's different ways they can represent you. They can represent you while they're running, while they're competing, but they're also representing you when they're not competing. And the things that they do, off the trails reflects on you. And so you're always looking for really good people. And I've just got to say, like, I'm so happy and so pleased, that we have the team of ambassadors that we have, because a lot of them are great personal friends. We compete hard, but that at the same time they're really good people. A lot of them get involved in the community. They give back in their different ways, and so you're absolutely right. It's always nice to have ambassadors who are doing well, winning races, but it's super important as well that they represent you, well, and you have that shared alignment of values, off the trails too.
And because you've been starting this like 8 years ago, arguably when trail running, ultra running just kind of got a new kick, basically a new push. How has then the work with the athletes changed? How do you, like, back in the days, it's like, oh, you're a friend of mine, I support you, good job done. But is it getting more professional? Is it getting more structured, getting more formal? What do you see happening from the athlete side as well?
Yeah, like you're absolutely right. I think when we started 8 years ago, a lot of the big brands, they hadn't really identified trail as a big thing yet. But that's obviously changed. Like I remember from a God running point of view, back in 2017, I think, they had was it the Wild Horse, or I can't remember. They had a couple of okay trail shoes, and in God running, we wanted to get them. But actually, the distributor in Hong Kong just didn't even import them, just wasn't even a thing. So fast forward to take now, it's a big part of their growth strategy. All the big brands have a trail strategy. Adidas have their Terex team, and so it's a big thing. And then there's a lot of money that's come in from the race side. We now have 2 or 3 big series that have scooped up a lot of the big races and turning it into a big money sort of events. And so it has, I guess, professionalized things. Um, I guess the sponsorships for ambassadors are getting more structured. To be honest, they're probably getting more expensive, which is good, because at the end of the day, the ambassadors, if they add value to you, you should add value to them as well. And it's not just about money, but you can add value in a lot of other ways. But yeah, it is definitely getting a lot more structured, a lot more professional, and a lot more competitive, for a lot of those things.
I was listening to Sally McRae this morning, Yellow Runner. She was talking when her and Billy Yang back in 2014, when that great film Western Time was made. They were stoked if they got a free pair of shoes, right? They thought, "Oh, this is killer," right? And today, what I'm interested in, obviously, Asian athletes don't, for all the reasons we know, don't command the same as maybe European athletes. But from 8 years ago today, I mean, I think you already answered my question. It's got more expensive, so. For example, I don't know the deal St. Maya got with Kailash, but 10 years ago she would have got a bag. I assume she got more than a bag today.
Yeah, and we sort of had a little bit of insight into that. But yes, I mean, I think with the very top Asian runners now, you're probably talking about like a salary that will cover living expenses and a bit more. So which is a lot more
Okay.
than it used to be, say, 5 years ago. I don't think there are any athletes or trail runners in Asia that could have been a professional surviving just on their sponsor salary, but you can do that now.
And so hit something else. I love content. And this might be unfair, so tell me, John, because you work with these athletes, the quality of content from, again, whether it's Sally McRae or Courtney, or maybe they have more money, or even people without money, seems a lot higher in the West. Is it a language barrier? Is it a shyness barrier? Or am I just not following it? I've seen St. Maya do more, but in general, the level of content from Asian athletes, and let's face it, you don't need to win races anymore if you make great content. Sure. So what's your any insight in or any views on this?
Yeah, and you're actually right. When we're looking for ambassadors, it's always good if you're winning races, but actually sometimes you pick an ambassador because actually they've got a great following. You believe in, they're helping people achieve their goals. They're very strong on socials. So there's different reasons to pick ambassadors. But you're right. I think in Asia, that maybe it's commercialism, I guess, from the athlete side. I think there's still sometimes a little bit of that feeling where, I just go out, I run races, and that's my job. Whereas I think in the West, you realize actually, if you want to be a professional runner, the job's not just about running; it's actually about all the other things. If you want your sponsor to pay you more, you actually need to add more value, and a lot of the ways is helping them promote. So, you know, on the sponsor side, I think it's probably incumbent on us to actually provide some guidance. Like to actually let them know, what do you want? Like, okay, well, can you give us a reel every couple of weeks? It doesn't have to be anything great. Maybe it can just be because the technology these days is amazing. Back 5 years ago, you'd probably need to take a big gimbal out. You need a runner following you. Actually, these days, the amount of like self videos that you can do with limited tech is amazing, and you still got a great product. So, a lot of it's just giving that guidance to the athletes. Probably gently nudging them because it's probably not something that comes naturally to a lot of them, but it's just a continued process of that, I think.
I think my take on it is that, I mean, I don't know, of course, T8 numbers, but Hoka making $3.4 billion in revenue is a very different revenue dimension than I'm sure that we're talking about here. So there's also just much more money in the West. The
Yeah.
consumer markets are much bigger.
Yep.
Hoka, Adidas are printing money right now in trail running. So they have a much bigger marketing budget to pay for photographers who then can take pictures of those athletes, right? I think it's just a big money game happening there. Here in Asia, the markets, every apart from China, are fairly reasonable and don't allow for huge marketing budgets. Even India is still a tiny market. I mean, I think that's just really it's a small 50,000 people ultra market in India. What's your take on China there? Because that's something that we always look a bit like a black box to us.
Yeah, I think it's a hard market. It's one we haven't cracked, but to be fair, hasn't really been a focus. I think we've always been worried about getting copied over there, and even without pushing there, we've been copied. At the same time, they've got some pretty strong domestic brands, which are very cost competitive. So it's kind of hard to. It hasn't struck us. I've distributed some brands as part of God Running for some European-based brands, for example, and they always look at China and think, oh, look, this is so tantalizing. It's the second biggest economy in the world, 1.3 billion consumers. Like, we got to hit this really hard. But I think the reality is it's just a really tough market, especially if you're not sort of in the middle of it. And then maybe it's a number of different markets that you have to approach differently with a lot of strong, competition. As soon as you come up with something quite good over there, you're going to get copied and they'll do it for half the price. So I think it's a tough market.
Yeah, certainly, again, I was in tech. The idea that you would go to China, sell tech, and they wouldn't do it 10 times cheaper, faster by tomorrow was ridiculous. So, yeah, I think that's hard. Slightly different question. You talked about chafing in the ultra, and it hurt. How much have you been chafed in business?
Yeah, the copying is sort of a consistent or a regular source of chafing. It's frustrating because you go through these one or two. We don't have the most products because we spend a lot of time on the product development cycle. We test them thoroughly. We get them just so the way we want them. So you go through these 1 or 2 year product development timelines, and then someone just sort of actually we were in Mark and I went to Taiwan to a fabric show earlier this year, and we went up to one of the booths, and she saw our T8 Sherpa shorts, and she said, "Oh yeah, I've seen those shorts before. Yeah, there was a brand in Hong Kong. They sent us your shorts and said, can you make them?" And so, yeah, that's a quite a consistent source of chafing. I guess the COVID stuff, that was hard. Changing rules. Can people go out? Can they exercise? There was no races for 3 years, which was a big part of our local community here. It made the shipping very, very difficult for a couple of years, especially Hong Kong, where you really just didn't have any international flights because the border controls were so strong. So, those have been things. I think in terms of chafing, there's probably just small business. You guys have been through it. There's just so many things to do. And at the end of the day, you've got to juggle so many balls. That's been hard as well. I have to say, a big shout out to Mark, my partner here. He's the one who's full time on this. And he deals with a lot of that. We've got a great relationship. I trust him implicitly, and he's great at handling all of that. But it's always a lot of things.
It's great that he's full-time because, you have, as you mentioned, your kids might run in, you have kids, a full-time job, and trying to run a business too, and try to be a top quality runner. I mean, that's a lot to handle.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And it's actually the same with at Gone Running as well. I've got a couple of really good partners there. Big shout out to Jojo and Peter. So, one of the things that I've learned with business is, if you get into bed with people, you got to get into bed with, people you can trust that you're aligned with. And yeah, fortunately, I'm sort of in that boat.
Where do you want to take the business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't see why we can't take this properly global. When you start something like this, I think you hold up a lot of the big brands on a pedestal, and you think, they've got massive teams, and they've been doing this for so long. How could we ever get to something like that? But then after a while, you actually realize, we've made lots of mistakes along the way, but it's not rocket science in a lot of ways. A lot of it's common sense. It's actually, it's doing proper research. It's managing risk. It's focusing on the things that are important. It's knowing where you need help and things where you can progress. So I think we're building up our own internal knowledge and our own skills and access to better suppliers, better technologies. But I think we do have something that's a little bit special in terms of the design of our products. I guess the Sherpa shorts were kind of the first brand to actually have some really lightweight shorts with the waist belt that could hold legitimately enough storage for running a miler. The underwear was very different to anything that was on the market before. When we did the masks, that was something. The ice tees had this side panels of mesh at the same time as using actually quite a rough sort of front back panel deliberately, because which I think gives you a lot more in tropics, when you can have the really super lightweight materials that are super smooth, but they become so clingy and they just stick. Whereas I think that extra texture sort of helps. So it's a really good sort of non-clinging when saturated tee, but at the same time, the evaporation rates and the breathability from the side. So we've got different products, and so I think we do have something that's special. We're learning on the other side, in terms of how to run a business, how to run a sports brand. The marketing, the branding, we're getting better relationships with suppliers and mills. And so, I think we can take this bigger. There's no reason why we can't keep going with it. So, I think Europe's a little bit hard because you've got to deal with things like tariffs and sort of VAT and things like that. But we're slowly going there. I'd love to get bigger in the US. We need to think about what that strategy looks like. But, for now, I think we're probably the dominant trail running brand in Hong Kong. We're probably up there in a lot of Asian countries, and I'd like to sort of improve on that.
Nice. I can relate to your passion for product a lot. It seems like you're heavy on a product side. So what technologies or what other innovations are you excited about that are coming out in the next 5 years? Like what's happening in this world of gears and products?
I think just the advances that are being made in sort of fabric technology in particular. That's all pretty interesting. I think maybe 5-10 years ago, a lot of fabrics were fairly bog standard. You could sort of change the grams per square meter, or it's like it's woven or it's knit or a few things. The composition. But we've got some really interesting things these days. Today, Mark and I were having a chat to, I guess, a mill supplier that actually weaves in graphene. For extra sort of heat conductivity. And I've come across graphene a little bit in my day job because, we look at sort of, graphite mines, for example, and, that idea of graphene, which, is kind of special because it's so conductive from a heat point of view. And then the fact that you can actually make it one atom sort of thick as a sheet. So there's a lot of really interesting things happening there. To a certain extent, in terms of design, how do you design a tee or a singlet that's a little bit different? I think, that's going to be incremental, but the fabric side is quite exciting.
And kind of similar question, but different take is, and you being in finance, you might appreciate this, that yesterday, Wednesday, the Fed announced they might lower interest rates in September. Taking into account how big now Hoka or Adidas, whatnot, are getting, assuming that money is getting cheaper, what does it mean for a company like you?
I think for us, we've been lucky enough that I think we were probably profitable in our second year. So we've never had to rely on debt funding. We've paid out some decent dividends for the last 3 years, which has been nice. So the cost of debt hasn't really been an issue for us. I think we've got more funds to invest. If we wanted to grow fast, we could throw money at this. But then I think you almost have to, earn the right to grow. You need to make a few mistakes on smaller numbers before you can, before you really know what you're doing. So for us, I think cost of capital hasn't been a factor in terms of our growth. It's more about us coming up the curve and feeling like we're confident to be able to invest money in this strategy or this strategy. Having said that, we're probably getting to the point where maybe we look at third-party investment. At the moment it's 50% Mark, 50% myself, but we're getting to that point where we've had a few private equity groups reach out to us and say, look, what are you doing? We'd like to sort of support you. So it's nice to be at that point where you almost de-risk the model. I think the brand has, it's sustainable now. It's got to the point where, it's kind of in people's sort of mindsets, and you just keep grinding and it should get bigger. But that's probably where we are on that.
My God, dude, so well done to bootstrap your own business, having again been in the startup streets. It is brutal. People think ultra running's hard. Pah. To have a dividend producing profitable business. I know it's been 8 years, and I'm sure it's been a lot. I'm sure it was not easy. But to say you need to earn the right, if I can just say it straight out, you earn right, to get a business to where it is today. Congrats, man.
Well, thank you, really but cool. It's still a work in progress. Yeah.
Of course, but to even get there,
you look at the stats on businesses and whatever it is, sort of 90% fail in the first year, and it's tough. But we talk about it quite a lot, and we're currently going through a 3 to 5 year planning cycle. But we're lucky. We sort of had this conversation yesterday where we think we've made it past that. It's with babies, they get through the difficult part at the start, and then they're going to make it. And we feel like we're there with T8. We're not resting on laurels. We're not cracking champagne and going to get distracted. But we're really pleased with where we're at and where we can take it.
That's exciting. I think the next 5 years look fairly bright in terms of Asia, in terms of capital markets. I think the space is growing. Acquisitions are going to happen more and more. I think we're going to go there, that if financing gets cheaper, someone will start to buy again. And we hadn't seen anything the last 5-6 years. I mean, Hoka was acquired 20, whatever it is. On running went public. So all this previous cheap money environment, and we have had expensive capital for the last 5 years now, almost, or 4 years. But so I'm curious to see how these brands like yours, for sure, Lecker, maybe, I don't know, are going to go in the next cycle.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. But I guess there's an overlay on the consumer as well. You have a look at something like a Nike share price, and I think that's probably halved in the last couple of years. So there is an overlay where we did go through this a period during COVID where everyone was buying products because they couldn't buy services, and we're kind of in the process of unwinding that and normalizing. Hopefully, that stays strong. The global economy sort of stays in a decent place, but I think you're focused on Asia with Lecker, but I think Asia is a really good place to be, because you look at the growth rates on most economies in Asia, and it's not unusual to find up 4, 5, 6, 7% per annum for the next 10, 20 years. The demographics are great. They've got young populations, GDP's increasing. They're getting into trail running. So we feel like we're in a pretty good place in terms of that outlook.
Trail running. So I'm old, John. I'm 57. I started trail running. Actually, I did my first 24 hours when I was 15. So I didn't do it. So I am 42 years in this. I spent between 18 and 28. And I came to Hong Kong in 1990. So I did Trail Walker in 93, 94. So I used to race Keith Noyes' Say On Asia, King of the Hills, back when he started it. Do you think that this massive explosion of interest in ultra and trail is sustainable? Because it's new. We spent 25 years where there was no trail and ultra. Right now, I mean, when I see people join it and they think, this growth is normal. As somebody in the industry, John, is this a unsustainable bubble, or is this just the beginning of a decade-long growth in
I
ultra
mean,
and
I
trail?
think I know exactly where you're coming from in terms of the growth that we've seen. I came to Hong Kong in 2010. My first sort of long race was Hong Kong, the very first edition of Hong Kong 100. I think I was one of 150 people to do it. And these days, they have to run a ballot for people to get in. I think they probably get 7 or 8,000 people sort of applying. So we've gone from 150 to, call it 8,000. It's not even on the on the UTMB World Tour or anything. So, you know, it just shows you how popular, the sport's become. I don't know if that explosive growth that we've seen over the last, 5, 10 years is going to continue at that rate. I still see there's growth ahead. There's a lot of reasons why people go to trail running in the end. People like going out into nature. I think there's more of a push to get people outside and outdoors, and it's just a lot more interesting than road running, I have to say. And so there's a lot of reasons that people are going there, but I think that explosive growth that we've seen over the last 10 years, I don't think it's going to be as strong as that. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, that would be hard to do, I think.
I think your timing, though, 8 years ago it was just starting. And again, I know you didn't time it to meet with this explosion, but again, commenting on Sally McRae, she was talking about they were stoked to get a free shoes, and there was no money in the racing, and no one ever
Yep.
expected to
Yeah.
make a living. Nobody ever expected to make a living. Whereas today, it's not easy, and nobody's making millions, or maybe Killian and Courtney are, but no one else is making millions. But that changes. John, just to let you know, when I entered Trail Walker back in the day, you just entered it. They couldn't even fill it up. I just entered it. It was cool, and you just entered it, and you turned up, and there was still a few hundred people doing it. That was it, and clearly that's
Yeah,
not the case
it's a
anymore either.
ballot these days, and if you want to keep your team, you have to raise $5,000 US, and if you don't, you go into a ballot. And I think that every year it's like a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 chance that you'll get pulled out. So, yeah, it's tough.
Wow. What's been a major learning from running you were able to transfer to the business world or to your entrepreneurship world?
I
Yeah.
think it's probably, I guess that a race is made up of a lot of different parts. Um, and however bad you're feeling at a particular point in a race, you wait sort of 20 minutes and you have a little point of euphoria where you're running down a hill again, and then you're feeling crap again. I think it's just realizing that it's a very long journey. How you're feeling right now is probably not indicative of where you're going to be in the next 10Ks or the next hour. And really just, the fact that if you keep pushing, you will sort of hit that finish line. And, I'm lucky enough that I've never DNF'd a race. We've had a few close calls, but yeah, I'm the sort of guy that I'm determined. I don't like giving up, and you just got to keep working through problems that you come along, and you keep grinding, and hopefully, that means success at the end of the day.
That is good. That is good startup advice. And you're running, John. What's the deal? Are you racing at the moment? How is your
Yeah,
running going?
I'm glad to say for the first time in a couple of years, I'm actually starting to feel a bit good about it. I went through a period just into COVID where maybe for 5 years, my knees were getting worse. The alignment was bad, and when you do the Ks and the vert that you do, they were just getting worse. And the alignment was bad, so I was just grinding away cartilage, sort of down to the bone, but in a very specific area. So I tried a whole bunch of different things, saw a lot of specialists, had some minor surgery. I got to the point where I didn't know if I'd be able to race competitively again, but I've had a bit of minor surgery. I've been doing some just really disciplined, rehab, 2 to 3 hours a week, including some joint dynamic sessions. And I'm finally at a point where actually my knees are better. And so I've just started to, try and lose the winter fat a little bit, just starting to ramp up the training. And I feel like I might have a season in 2024, 25, with COVID and then, the last couple of years being a bit on off. I've really raced for about a year in the last 5. So mentally, I've lost a lot of confidence. Will I be able to get back to those levels? And the reality is I probably won't, because, I'm 46 now, and as you get older, everything gets a little bit harder and you get a bit slower. I keep telling myself I'm a little bit wiser, but I'm probably not. But yeah, look, I'm excited about the training over the next 6 months and hitting some races, and would love to give the Asia Trail Master a bit of a shake again. To be honest, I look at the quality that's in that these days. Guys like Stingray and Jeff Campbell, and I don't think I compete with those guys. But if I can, target a podium here or there, that might be a nice place to be.
As you get older, do what I do, John. Come to backyard. It's flat. It's gentle. It's where the old guys hang out. You don't need to be fast. Your knees are okay. You'll be
Yep, I
podiuming
think that's
all
probably
day
some
long.
good advice.
I mean, the good news is that if Stingray and Jeff and so on are winning, that's also good for T8. So you kind of, you're winning
Yeah.
along the way. So it's
Heads I win, tails I win.
win-win. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in UTMB this year. So my last question would be like, what's your prediction for maybe this UTMB or even for next year? That you are so close to many of the top athletes in Asia. What's top 10, top 3, CCC, UTMB? What's going to happen?
I mean, I think I guess the one I'm most excited about is Esther Silag. She's just come off third at Western States. She obviously had a really good performance at Western States last year, and then I think she made a last-minute decision to go to UTMB, and it just didn't really have, I guess, the planning and the structure, and maybe her family wasn't there as much as she needed them to be, and so that was a tough race. But I'm really excited to see how she goes, at UTMB, because she's been building up to it. It's been part of the plan. She's very structured with her training, and off the back of, I think, her Western States run, even though she came third, I think it was the fourth fastest time at Western States in its history. So that's probably one I'm kind of really excited about. And then also, Stingray at CCC. I think he's the sort of guy, he can have really good races and sometimes not so good races. But if he can pull it out on the day, he's sort of right up there with the world's best.
Yeah, nice. Can't wait to follow that. I'm going to be there in Chamonix, so I'm going to connect with all the Asian runners. I can't wait to be back with the crowd.
Yeah, we're going to have to get a
sure.
booth there one year for T8 and give myself an excuse to get over there.
Yes.
Nice. Ned, any last question for you as a fanboy of T8?
Well, not just, you are very humble about your company and what you've done. You've done a great job. It's one of the few occasions where, when I asked about brand, your product is so damn good, you almost don't need to do it. I suppose the one last question would be, you did talk about private equity companies one day buying it. You put so much effort into it. Do you think you could ever give it up? Do you think you could ever pass on your
Yeah,
baby
it's a good
to someone
question.
else?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I could see myself doing for the next 20 years. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's, even with the day job and the kids and the training, it's something that I always make time, to do. If I'm honest, do I love working on T8 or do I love the day job? It's probably not the day job. So yeah, it would be nice to get to a point where maybe it's a little bit more sustainable, and yeah, I can maybe jump. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, don't have an answer for that today. There's probably halfway houses as well where you get funding from private equity and you retain a certain amount of control. Yeah, anyway, we'll kind of have to see. It's a nice problem to start to have. So yeah, let's see where we end up.
Awesome. Well, listen, man, we wish you all the best on it.
Yeah.
Super cool. Great stuff. And I hope your running comes back as your knees come back and your confidence in your running. You'll be
Fingers crossed. But
podium.
Thanks so much for having me today, guys. It's been a really, really great conversation and really love the support for T8. Thank you.
Where can people find out about T8? What are the links? The
So
websites?
T8.run is the main website, and you can find the social media links there. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Come and have a look, and if you've got any questions, you can reach out to hello@t8.run, and we'll definitely get back to you.
Also, the YouTube channel. I've been watching your reviews on your own products, quite casual and authentic. I love it. So also you can see the product in action with John wearing them.
Fantastic, yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. The last part of this podcast is Ned's drop. So he is the wise guy of the two of us, and he is going to share his latest drop of wisdom and inspiration. Please stay on the show for a few more minutes, but I'm handing over now to you, my dear friend Ned.
Let's do this. Okay. As we all know, it is the Olympics, which have been interesting to watch. I have a strong view. I have lots of strong views, but this one is that if ultra ever gets to the Olympics, which I don't know if it should be, there's only one option for it. It's backyard. And this My drop today is called One Day. One day. Would people watch people running for days and days? Surely not. But what if it never ended? Or you never knew when it ended? But the rules, everyone can follow. They are simple. Last person standing. Everyone understands that, right? It's like a gladiator event. Back in the day, when the Olympics were invented, it's a fight to the death, but without the violence. Played out on your smart device, at home, on the train, while walking to work, normal people's morbid fascination grows as the other Olympic events stop, or someone wins, or weirdly have a finish line. This goes on and on. Each hour, you watch people do the same thing again and again. But at each hour, it grows more incredible. Like, what? You ask your friend? They never stop? Nope, not until only one left. If anything was made for TV, it's this. Everyone gets it. We're going to see real endurance here, real stories. And you know what? It's men and women together in the same event. And even better, there's no silver medal, only gold. WTF is this? I got to tell my friends. They're like, I don't watch running. You tell them, no. Have you seen this? Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what? The winner is 48 years old? And he's not a pro? He's a school teacher? Or a dentist from Belgium? Or a New Zealand running bum? And what about that Japanese guy who passed out unconscious halfway round the loop? In this age, in this modern age of storytelling and streaming, there can only be one event for the Olympics. I think it must be. Let it be so, Laz. Ned.
Thank you, Ned. Hey.
That's my little plea. If the Olympics are watching, come on. I mean, and nothing against the ultra's hard for TV. No one would watch it. But can you imagine people on the Olympics tuning in and they're like, what? What the hell? These dudes? Like, everyone understands backyard. Like, everyone gets it. So, look, do we really need to be in the Olympics? No. But
do you know what? Like, I really love that as an idea. Like, a few different things, but like, I think, like, people like watching car accidents. You have a car accident, everyone sort of, has to rub a neck and keeps looking at it and they have to slow down and have a good look. And these are car accidents in slow motion, as people go through increasing states of disintegration. There's something that's just you can't take your eyes away. I think it would be great. And if we have braking in the Olympics, if we have synchronized diving, I don't see why we can't have backyard.
And because of streaming, it is this. They tune in each hour, and you're right. That's a live car crash of people. And again, I've always watched the Japanese dudes.
Yeah.
Nobody puts more on the line. These Japanese dudes literally are crawling. And anyway, so there's a little thing. Marcus, if you know anybody in the Olympic movement, get onto it.
I'm not gonna lie, I do know. My family was in not the IOC, but quite close to it. So I am going to have dinner with them tonight. So let's see what happens.
Let's go.
There's still time to get into Paris.
Thanks.
No, actually, there's probably not time, actually. It's going to take another 2 weeks.
It's so tough, yeah. But maybe in 4 years. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ned. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the back of joining this One More K podcast. Anyone out there, thank you for listening, of course. We're going to have another expert coming up, episode 30 next week. That's exciting. Another special guest joining. Until now, join us on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, whatnot. And thank you so much.